Oh.
Are we being filmed?
Yes.
So we should be nice and not go.
Yes, please put the sunshine face on.
Oh, okay.
Please, you are also on the panel.
So guys, we will be filmed. So let's be nice, smiling. Okay, can we start now? Hello, everyone. This is the topic which is dear to all our hearts, at least for the panelists which are there. My name is Lena Michenkova. I'm a founder of Linda. We develop mangrove reforestation projects in Africa and Asia. We also finance some. And this is why I decided to have this panel and to have this discussion and to have such a diverse crowd in the audience and in front of you. I will be reading some of the introductions first. Sandeep will kill me, but I was inspired by your biographies, guys. When I'm reading this, I'm like, oh my God, the world should know it. So Sandeep Roy Choudhury, how do you pronounce it?
Perfect. What you did, what you said.
Perfect. So he's a co-founder and director of VNV. This is a company working in carbon finance and adaptation. But he's also a co-founder at Carbon Initiative Forum. This is a non-profit working on climate policy awareness for the youth. Applauding. Of a blue carbon revolving fund, Mangroves Now, and recently launched a climate change impact fund. Basically, he'll be defending project developers' perspective and also investors at this panel today. So Julius Sila is a nature-based solutions expert. Welcome. Specializing in community-centered mangrove restoration projects. He's also a drone pilot, data and GIS analyst, and he leads various projects in Kenya under COBEC. And COBEC is a community-based environmental conservation organization for climate mitigation and livelihood enhancement. Welcome. And Hery Daulay is a Deputy Director for Coastal Restoration, Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of Indonesia, working in coastal ecosystem restoration, including mangroves, and also overseeing an ongoing project for seagrass rehabilitation, a wonderful one, I bet. Hery is involved in mangrove community engagement for social and economic activities, and a program for waste management and marine pollution. Yeah, this is something to think of. Yeah, to switch off. We'll be having Irina Federica Aula joining us virtually later today, but we'll start from here. We'll start from a simple and a very complex question. How would you define a high-quality mangrove reforestation project? There's been a lot of discussions of about quality. So what's quality for you? Sandeep, let's go.
Okay, I think we've spent too much on the quality question, too much time on the quality question, and for me, we spent too much time on the wrong quality question. The quality of a mangrove reforestation comes from the quality of the forest, and not just the carbon accounting system of the forest, because that is a completely different issue. For me, the quality of a good restoration project lies in the long-term sustainability of the project, lies at the community participation of the project, which is also tied into the long-term sustainability. I think, so we need to stop thinking trees and we need to think ecosystem, which includes people, wildlife, as well as the trees. And I think what a good project would look like is something that we are a carbon project developer, right? So we are around, let's say, for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, then what? An ecosystem, for an ecosystem lifetime, that's a very tiny, minuscule of a lifetime. So how do we leave ecosystems that can survive decades and maybe centuries? And that's what a good project design would look at. Number two is, what were the drivers of the degradation and how, because when you're reforesting, it again, 40 years later, what's going to happen to it? I mean, what were the drivers now that should not exist in 10 years' time? And that's where I think the project design comes in a lot. So for me, a very high quality mangrove project would mean extremely bottom-up approach to the actual project design and the project benefits. And benefits, I'm not just meaning cash benefits. I have a different perception. I'm happy to talk about it later as well. But value chain building within those mangrove forests with livelihoods, with sustainable development, energy access, water access. These are very important parts of a mangrove project. I think in most parts of the world, I mean, I don't think there's only one size fits all any which way. But for me, that is where the quality of the forest is for me more important than just a straight out quality in terms of how people have narrowed it down to a CO2 quality. For me, that's a co-benefit in my opinion. You know, the benefit is the forest in itself.
Thank you. I think you remember my name. I'm Julius, Sila. We are doing mangrove restoration in Kenya. Yeah, this is a very good question, as I'm working with the local community. The way I define high quality mangrove restoration project, it should be centered community based and also should be sustainable and also be guided by science. Because most of the projects, before you invest on a mangrove project, you should be very consultative with the community. You need also to understand what are the challenges of the community, what are the causes of degradation in that ecosystem. You need also to understand, be guided by science and also the local and administrative governing around that forest ecosystem, so that your project, before you invest in such a project, you know all the challenges, and your project should marry all the challenges, be customized in a way that it will try to address all the challenges which are threatening the forest, and at the end you will be getting a high diverse ecosystem and a more sustainable forest ecosystem.
Thank you, Dr. Lena. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for having us here. Everyone, good morning. My name is Hery Daulay, and right now I'm working at the Ministry of Marine Affairs and the Fisheries of Indonesia, doing some coastal mangroves. Yeah. And I think that the question is about the high quality mangrove project to how to ensure the ecological restoration, and also community engagement is very needed right now, and also in a way of long-term sustainability. So I think there's such as ecological success and also community involvement and sustainability, and also how to impact this assessment maybe from carbon sequestration and also the biodiversity improvement. Thank you.
Since mangrove reforestation projects are so complex, involving so many stakeholders, the interests could also differ. And sometimes we have to compromise. Like, I am on the ground, I know the trade-offs, but I also know the red lines. Julius, what would be red lines for you? Or some sort of limitations, some sort of compromises which you would never allow in mangrove reforestation?
That's a very interesting question. In a mangrove ecosystem, there are many things which also do limit the forest ecosystem. Like one of the, based on my experience in mangrove reforestation in Kenya, you find like we are fighting illegal logging, and we are also fighting with all other people from the government, because some of the laws are not even supportive to the communities, and also reforestation, sometimes they are dragging back. But communities also working with them closely, like most of the time we try to encourage them like from the ground, so that they can be like, they can own the project, the entire project, like community ownership of the project. We incorporate communities from startup of the project, like creating awareness about the project. We engage them. We also talk with them, like guide them in nursery establishment, collection of the propagate. They are in the part of the process of the entire process, like even to the planting activities. Also, some of other things we try to address in this are the challenges. Like we need also to customize our project in a way that it will also try to address some of the challenges like illegal logging. And this one we try to address using the alternative livelihood like beekeeping. Like you find in most of the forests, there are a lot of bees, but communities, they have their unique ways on how they harvest them, but it's not sustainable. In this way, we try to bring the beekeeping project whereby the community not only depend on, they can see the importance of the forest, but using the forest for beekeeping project, which will also help the communities.
Okay, from Indonesia, actually, the red lines is how to we improve the law enforcement. Yeah. This kind of law enforcement can be done after we socialize to the community first, not only illegal logging by happening in Indonesia right now. It's also deforestation comes from the abrasion itself. So it's a nature that can cause the loss of the summer coastal mangroves right now. So that's why we are balancing right now, include the ecological integrity right now, and the community rights and compliance with legal frameworks. That's our guideline right now. Thank you.
I want to put an angle for Sandeep in this. You are the guy that fights mangrove fights. And one of the fights is methodologies and standards. You can also touch upon other stakeholders and fights with them, but I guess this one is an importance.
It is a very important fight, and I think where we are missing. Yeah, well, thank you for that. If I could just touch upon the red line, I think from my perspective, the red line, because in any project there is always an affected party. Regardless of whether you are working with indigenous or whatever it is, at some point you are stopping somebody's livelihood, legal or not, debatable. And I think that red line is extremely important to recognize, because there will be overt attempts by power structures that includes politicians, bureaucrats, etc., any location all across the world, which will border on corruption. So I think that's the big red line that you will have to put. And that's a trade-off you will have to make. You will lose planting areas. You will lose areas that you thought are, eligible for restoration, etc. That's something. It's a trade-off you will make from day one, because in every project there are complex social structures and there are complex power structures, and that includes from the village level as well. So that's something that's, and that's a red line you'll have to probably, look at. But on the fight part, and that's something we've been fighting the standards for a very, very long time, actually connects to this. Because the standards actually throw legal frameworks at us as something that is a security. But in a lot of areas that we work, those legal frameworks don't really matter. So even if you have a contract with a fisher shrimp farmer to reforest their abandoned shrimp farm, and tomorrow, if that person decides to log off those mangroves, you will not sue that person. So what's the point of harping so much on that contract? What we should be worried about more is the social contract, the social dynamics on why that person will not log it in spite of whatever they may exist. And there will be a portion of people who will go rogue. That's exactly why we take buffers and why we take our risk-adjusted numbers. But that is not going to be the norm. And if it indeed is the norm, then that's a very bad project. So design, in my opinion. So I think where we fight a lot with standards is the interpretation of legal policy frameworks. What interpretation you may have sitting in DC or Berlin might not be the same in Sumatra or in Sri Lanka for that matter. So there are various different ways of understanding legalities, and I think that's what we struggle with. Because we told by the reviewers, standards, monitor this. Why can't you monitor? I can't monitor this because, you know, there are 3 days boat journey and then there is a problem monitoring this periodically. I mean, I will still monitor them, but I might do it every 6 months instead of the 1 month that I'm being asked to do. There are constraints, you know, and this constraint somehow is lost in translation for especially small patch planting, which I would assume is true for most of our countries. We don't have large patches of planting where I can just, you know, get some drones and I'm flying the drones up and down. It just doesn't work. So I'm like, guys, we need to find a way. That's why I was like, don't get too hung up on the carbon science of it. You also need to get hung up about the social science of it. Because climate change is not just about the CO2. If you don't understand the social science, there's no way to get a good project done. And that for me is where the challenge lies. And there's a fight that we do with all standards. I mean, they just changed something, just to give you an example, for where they changed the mangrove methodology from VM14 to VM33 without a single stakeholder like us being consulted. And they said, no, we have IPCC scientists. I'm like, has the IPCC scientists, how many mangroves have they planted? I have nothing against IPCC scientists. Trust me on that. But if you're going to make a rule about planting mangroves with the science of what the carbon of the mangrove is, then that's a wrong person setting the rule. So that exactly is what happened. And today we have a situation where I can't monitor half of this. And buyers are like, why can't you transition to the new methodology? Because if you don't, then I think you have poor quality. So the definition of quality, I'm like, whoever said VM14 was low quality, right? But I cannot do something in VM33 and I'm very clear about it. I'm like, no, this is principally wrong. Nobody asked me. So that is the problem that we have today. Stakeholders being consulted, while there's a huge requirement for every standard to consult stakeholders at the ground level, none of these standards do consultation in the way that should be. So I think there's a lesson to be learned on the other side, saying, guys, you need to do this as well. You can't throw FPIC requirement as this and not really take anybody else's consent. You know, so that is my big fight, actually. But really welcome everybody else to join this fight, because otherwise it's a few voices here and there which are not heard at all. You know, so.
Oh my God, I can feel your pain. I am joining in whenever you need me. I'm there because I'm fighting the same fights on the project developer side. I would like to address the next question to Hery. So you hear the passion, you hear the pain. How could we, as carbon projects, as international investors, better fit into what you in Indonesia are doing? Because Indonesia is such a huge site for mangroves. You are the treasury. You are the one. How can we help you? What's your avenue now?
Thank you, Dr. Lina. I would say that I agree with this, and that that's a legal framework is very needed to everything that we're going to, especially on the rehabilitation of this mangrove project. But actually, Indonesia, as we know, is covered like 3.4 million hectares of mangroves, representing about 23% of the world mangroves. So it's a big task for us, you know. Like in 1980s, we have a deforestation about 185,000 hectares. Until now, we decrease it right now. So our targeting right now, we have a new presidential. We're targeting about 600,000 hectares to grow in until 2026. But again, there is a legal framework that has to be done in Indonesia. We are very open-handed with international organization, NGO, anything. But again, we need to be clear that every international agencies or NGOs must be strict by our regulation. You know, like mostly Sandeep said that they have a project in Sumatra, not Sumatra, in Aceh, the one that got hit in tsunami in 2004. Yeah, you know? So there's a rehabilitation a lot of there, yeah, including international organization like World Bank, COBEC, and also the other international organization. The benefit for us is that we need to collaborate. This is very important for us to collaborate either funding by the and also to establish regulation, establish regulation, and also how to planning it and how to action it and how to monitoring it. And also we need to come up with the social benefit as well. Yes, social economic benefit. Not only just people, community that lives around the coastal or small islands in Indonesia, just being told to rehabilitation of the mangroves, but they also get the benefit of that, as a social and economic things, like coastal protection, and make and then biota increasing, like many nursery ground stuff like that. That's our really benefit that comes along with the this regulation. So I think the pilot project that comes out from outside, we are open hand, and then probably it will follow by our regulation as well. Like in your project in Indonesia, that has to be followed by our regulation, right? So what's the zoning? Zoning is more needed right now in Indonesia, not only in the land, but in ocean or the sea. We have a zoning for aquaculture, for the ecosystem mangrove. So you need to permit. You need to. Our government, or Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, also declare a permit for that one. So it will not be reallocation by the other community groups. So it will be staying for the mangrove area. That's it.
So Julius, I think this is a bridge to you. Talking about the benefits for communities, what would you say would be expected benefits for communities? When an investor, a project developer come to the ground, it's not just restoring, it's not just giving jobs, it's more than sharing carbon. What should there be?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, like in Kenya, according to the national management plan for mangrove restoration, it is clearly highlighted that some of the challenges which our mangrove ecosystem are facing entirely in our coastline are what we call multidimensional related poverty from the local communities. You find that like the local communities around that area, they are poor in a way that even construction, you see like the causes of degradation clearly stated in the document, construction falls, illegal logging, charcoal burning. So any project which is invested in such ecosystem, for it to be investable and also be sustainable for a long time, should also try to address these root causes of degradation in a way that it will not only benefit just a few communities, but also it will try to have a large number of the community being part of the project. Like in our case, we have user groups, and these user groups are registered, and we not only work like if we have an ecosystem which is covering like that 200 hectares of land, every part of the creek you find like there are different community groups which they have established nurseries through the guidelines of us and also Kenya Forest Service. So that you find in every corner, we are trying to avoid like the illegal logging through, because every community is being part of the project and knows the benefits of the project. Like we also, the alternative livelihood, they are benefiting from that. And apart from that, all the coastal community which are living around the mangroves, they depend on fisheries. Like some of our creeks, you find like communities are telling you stories like, we used to get the crabs here and also many fish, but we no longer get the crabs because the forest is purely degraded. So if the project is investing more, not only planting trees, but also catering the needs of the community and trying to address the root causes of degradation, the project will be a very good investable project. So that, and again, we also do have like the community scouts. Let the community monitor the forest, because we will find like if we are using the Kenya Forest Guards and the rangers to protect the forest, you find it's like a fight within the community. But if the community owns the project, they will nominate their own forest rangers who will be patrolling around the forest, and that's also what we are doing to try to address some of the challenges, and also the community also benefit in terms of employment and also the alternative livelihood around the grids we are working on. Thank you.
Sandeep, I would like you to continue on benefits, but also to have this angle of a project developer being the one who does it, actually designs and does it, implements it. And also a huge question is, who's paying? Is it paid by investors? Is it paid by the market today to have all this done?
Sure. I think, yes, I think I agree with Julius on a lot of things here. One is that, and this I would like, I mean, just for the Indonesia experience, I mean, you guys paid for a lot of this, right? So, so who pays for it? At least there's some example right here. But I agree with you. I think, you know, local regulations are extremely important to be respected. And I think, but local regulations, when they're being drafted as well, have to be consultative, in my opinion. And it cannot be a top-down. So for me, I think that is a very important part. And something that we've been struggling with host country governments is the distinction between reforestation and RED. Somewhere we are being pulled into, because, you know, small scale reforestation is very different from big RED, you know, because these are not big parts of land that are being concession and then not deforested. These are small village communities planting 2 hectares, 3 hectares here. Somehow we get caught up in the policy discussions of like 100,000 hectare RED plus, but I'm like, guys, but that's a different issue altogether. There's a jurisdiction of state land, jurisdiction, because here what happens is, the small-scale restoration project, Julius is going to your point. I mean, for example, in Indonesia, we have a batik supply chain that happens. So women come together and we have this whole thing, and this with the Aceh project as well. We have coffee supply chain, small things, which is tied to the inland agroforestry systems. These are small entrepreneurs who are being built, and somehow we get tied in legislation with the big RED. I'm like, guys, when our entire planting is like not more than 3,000 hectares, your RED projects are starting at like 150,000 hectares. So that's a distinction that I struggle with. And because that ties in with the socio part, right? I mean, the socio part for me is the investor, and this is something we increasingly promote with different host country governments, is that not everything can be done by everyone. So World Bank can do something. Public finance is a massive part to play. Your own national budgets can do something. But what carbon markets does is a little bit on the side. What it does is it plugs a small gap, the last mile connectivity, if I may, which an NGO is doing, but who's funding it? And most NGOs and foundations that we have worked with have these project-wise budgets, right? Which a donor comes, gives them 1 year budget and you go. But a 1 year budget is not a socio-economic budget. You are looking at a 15-year budget, you know, because you're talking about one generation. That's how we think. Like, guys, whatever we are doing is for one generation. The first, I mean, there was an FPIC meeting I went to in 2009. There was a 9-year-old kid. I went back there in 2020. This kid is 20 years old now. Googling carbon prices. He's like, whatever their benefit share is, was absolute nonsense. I'm like, I agree with you. You know, and that's the generational thing that you would want to bring into project design, which includes livelihoods, which includes legislation, which includes education, and which includes whatever that area needs. Now, not all areas will need the same livelihood-based approaches. For example, in one of our mangrove projects, we are looking at building boat hospitals on a boat which goes from island, because it's in India where we have a combination of 400 islands. But each of them have to travel by boat for 5 hours to access the first medical center. So I was like, why can't we have something, at least checkups? Okay, maybe not emergency, but it's a start. So everybody will have different things to do in terms of livelihoods, in terms of, there's no one size fits all. But the idea should be on how this becomes a generational thing, And that's where I think everybody has a part to play, which is where the private sector money, it's not just grants. I'm a big believer in carbon markets, not just because of the fact that, okay, but it's a transaction. So it's not somebody just handing out you money. It's no. You are selling something, which is why you're getting something, which is an amazing concept in my opinion, and it's climate justice in my opinion for corporates. So that's where I come in terms of the social part, and I think long-term project design is very important. And investors, just to touch upon this, if you give me 20 more seconds, are de-risking projects by investing in socio-economic projects. They're like, oh, but it makes it so much more expensive. I'm like, yeah, but if you don't spend that money now, there is no mangrove reef 7 years later. So what are you investing in? So in my opinion, it's a risk management tool to actually invest. Don't build the school after 10 years, do it now. Because the carbon takes time, when a tree grows, and you know this, right? Over 10 years, most of the bulk of the carbon is coming between year 8 to year 13. But that's not the time to spend the money. It's time to spend now, because otherwise in year 8, there is nothing to count anymore. So that's the project design. And I think investors right now don't pay for it, most of them. But thank you for understanding this. But it needs more education. You can't just think commodity. If you think commodity, it's not a 15-year nature-based project, because that's not how it will work.
Let's a little bit think commodity, because this is when Irina Fedorenko-Aula, the head of origination and Investable, virtually steps in, and she is prepared a little bit on carbon pricing. I don't know, sorry about that. But yeah, we can start. Let's listen.
I'm the head of origination at Investable, and I'm extremely honored to be able to contribute to today's discussion. Investable is a carbon procurement and market intelligence platform, and we are helping companies and investors to source, vet, and transact high-quality carbon solutions. So when it comes to blue carbon, it's one of our favorites. It's, as you know, has a great interest from buyers, and it's also very complex. And how do we make sense of what is high quality and what is maybe not a great quality at the moment is through a lot of data that we collect and the market intelligence data that we now make available for everyone to use on our platform. So you can go to Investable.com and log in and get access to a free version of this platform. So for example, you will find a VCM investment attractiveness index that would rank countries by their readiness for participation in the international VCM market and in carbon credit expert, and the changes in the scores. You could have policy profiles, and of course, the jurisdiction would greatly impact the price and the quality perception of the project by investors. More relevant for this discussion, pricing insights. And if we look at mangroves have been achieving minimum price of $4.3 and maximum price of 47. And historically, they've been steadily growing. And they are predicted to continue to grow, actually, the prices. Blue carbon, why? Because investors value high quality and the possibility for community engagement in these projects. When we do quality assessment, we put a huge emphasis on community engagement, not just in the forms of co-benefits, but in the forms of clear, traceable, understandable way of carbon benefit sharing. If the project has very meaningful model or a traceable or transparent model for carbon benefit sharing, it will get a very high score on community benefits, which will benefit the project score overall. And if you look at which projects achieved the highest price, these are the projects you would all know, and they have high emphasis on community. Projects that achieve the highest price are Myanmar and Nigeria, and then a lot of Myanmar at 45, like in the high 40s, and then again Nigeria, and then followed by Pakistan in the high 30s. And these are the projects that put communities in the center of the project, have meaningful benefit sharing models, and despite difficult jurisdictions like Myanmar, they have proven track record of delivering high quality project where communities have a say, have a seat at the table, and are leading project implementers and stewards of their land. And this is incredibly important to investors. The market want to show that they value it. And we also, while doing due diligence, we also pay a lot of attention on this element. So it is not just the right thing to do. And I know that we are all here, we believe in the mission of carbon markets to make better life for millions of people out there, and to use this tool and to restore mangroves as a meaningful shield from the elements for the people who live in the front line of climate change. So I understand it's a very meaningful mission, but it's also a very pragmatic tool to achieve higher price for the project and to make sure that the project is sustainable, long-lasting, and can achieve all the benefits and have a great impact. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be with you today.
So these are the nice figures to which we still have to come, because the Mangrove Reforestation project starts way before you can get those prices for the credits which you have issued. So probably to close the discussion, one question I would like to ask you, if there's one thing you could do differently, if there's one thing you could change in mangrove reforestation projects now, what would that be? Starting from Hery.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Lee. Maybe we're doing, from 2023, we're doing some research on the how to establish the method of the planting itself, to rehabilitation itself. So there is a lot of ways of a method to rehab in Indonesia. It depends on the contour of the most island. Like in Sumatra, it's different in Java. Yeah, you know. So I think the planning is the number one. Yeah, not only just planning, but we have a planning to make it sustainable. Yeah. Like I said before, there is a lot of challenges. There's a lot of obstacles and constraints to rehabilitation of this mangrove forest. Not only come from the stakeholder like community engagement, but also the nature itself. It makes us really think hard how to make a new strategy or to find a new method. Like example, in north of Java, most of the north of Java is already 7 kilometers away abrasion. Yeah, during this 10 years. So this can be pictured as how do we reserve, or how do we rehabilitation, or how do we make sure the ecological can be protected? Yeah, by doing maybe infrastructure, hard infrastructure, like a nature-based solution. We're doing recently that we have NGO coming to help us, to guidance us to make this strategy to protect our coastal line along the up north of Java Island. So the second, I think, the more important is how to manage the involvement of the community groups, because this is really important, because they has to be feel they own this forest or these mangroves, as well as they get the benefits from it. from fisheries, from non-timber products, yeah, not just illegal logging, but timber products, non-timber products, such as like the one that Sandeep said, batik, make it batik from like the one I wear. Yeah, this is the mangrove batiks actually. So, and then the coffee, the food, the drinks, and all the things derivative from products from mangroves. Like I said, 93% of mangrove can be utilized to increase our socio-economic benefits to its community, especially in a community in a mangrove area. So I think that's all about it. Thank you.
Yes, one of the things I would wish to see a change is people forward on mangrove restoration, and where many people fail is the funding models on restoration project. Like most of the time, you find many of the grants, applications, donor funding, they are so specific. Like I've donated like 100,000 trees, you have to plant 100,000 trees and report that, not knowing there are other dynamics around that, dealing with the communities. You can't tell someone, like, you cannot organize community group and just take them and tell them, you have to plant trees, this is your forest, you have to protect it, and you just leave them and they have nothing to it, just like that. So the funding model should change in a way that it can accommodate. Remember, we are not only planting trees, but we are growing them. It's a process. You have to monitor, you have to do mapping. There are other things like science should be also guiding your site. Like you have to do some experiment. You have to analyze the salinity of your soil so that your project should be investable in a way that if these trees once you plant, when you come to monitor, like we monitor like twice in a year, you will find the trees are surviving. Because many people, you see like the funding model they are doing, you cannot even, others they say like 0.5 per tree. And that one, if you try to divide it, to cover the challenges of the community, logistics and other things, you find like it's like they are funding a ceremonial activity, which will happen one day and it's done like that. This one will not be promising us that this project will be investable in the future, because if I come, I need to do some monitoring of the forest, I have no resources to do this. So if the model, funding model, it should be also changed and try to accommodate this, because there are other challenges you are trying to address as well. We are doing reforestation would be very helpful to the community and also to the ecosystem and also the biodiversity needs.
I don't know if there's one thing. I think there's so many things I want to change. But yes, I mean, if I had to look at one, it would be the way that people have complicated carbon regulations in the world. I think the voluntary carbon market was meant to solve a problem that was unsolvable by other participants, because like I started, I was like, not everybody can work on everything, right? I think we've convoluted everything back to where it started, where everybody is involved, which is great, but I think the policy thing is the biggest roadblock right now. And buyer appetite, of course, like you said, who pays for it, right? And for me, it's a responsibility question. I mean, so as a good business, you should be paying for it. And I think right now, corporates are using quality as an excuse not to do anything. So yeah, carbon projects, quality, it's not that great, so we don't do anything. And so you get away without doing anything. And for me, that's fundamentally wrong. And the complexities of policy level on the ground also is adding to this problem. So we have two problems. One, there is no funding problem. I think that's taken care of to some extent. As long as there is a buyer for the project, there will be a funder for the project. That's essentially how everything works. So I think I would like to really see some level of urgency in policy, and I would want to see some level of urgency on the business side as well. For really, if you're talking about climate action, then it's immoral to be doing climate action only in your country. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. So that is, for me, is where I would like to see changes and one change: corporate policy, sovereign policy. If this works, we'll have a very vibrant climate finance. In my opinion, carbon finance is still climate finance, big time. So I would really like to see that ramp up. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. I totally enjoyed it. I hope it will be recorded and I will have a chance to show it to other people as well. If there's one thing I would like to change is the pace, because we are sitting, talking, a little bit walking, but we should be running. And this is my kind of sense of urgency. Let's run, let's make it happen for everyone. And yes, let's make one step back and see what sustainability is. And this is not like making climate action happening in one country. It doesn't work like this. It's global, the problem is global, and the solutions should be global as well. Let's rechannel capital and let's run. Thank you. Thank you for the Digital Innovations Pavilion for hosting us today and having a chance to have this meaningful conversation. If any questions from the audience, then yes, thank you so much.
Congratulations, great session.
Take a picture.
Yes, please.
Lena,
Yes, coming.
take a picture.